Michael, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much for the introduction. Thank you for having me. I know it's Christmas season. I think there are a lot of things distracting, so I appreciate everyone making the time to be here. I'm really delighted to join your community. I can actually see all of you on my monitor, so if you have your cameras on, that's actually helpful for me to make sure I can stay connected with you and provide an engaging experience for all of you. So I'm inviting you in the act of self-interest. If it's comfortable for you and you're able to do so, to turn your camera on, it'll actually help support me in making engaging experience for everyone. So thank you. I see people are turning their cameras on. Okay, welcome everyone. All right, so let me dive in. I'm here to talk to you about what it means for us to go in leading beyond change, to go beyond our usual, to move into the beyond, the future of work, understand beyond our traditional approaches to understanding change. And the very specific thing I want to focus on today is about moving from servant leadership, which everyone's heard about, everyone knows that, it's kind of a bit of a moving target in some ways, to what we're going to talk about is evolutionary leadership. And the reason we're talking about this is because having been involved with the Agile community for about 20 years now, really originally starting with XP even before Agile got coined, I've come to realize that we need to look at this broader world to unlock success with Agile. So that's the journey we're on. I'm really excited to share with you tonight. So let's dive in. Now, my background is originally in artificial intelligence research. I actually spent a lot of time trying to figure out how do we get robots to function in complex environments. And really the challenge we're facing now with Agile is how do we get people to work in complex environments. So it's the same challenge. The only difference is we're working with wetware instead of like hardware and software. Now, I got involved. I actually switched out of. I got published papers in artificial intelligence, but I switched gears and I started working as a software developer. So I know what it's like to get projects done in the trenches. I got involved with Agile very early on, as a way to do that. And then I moved on to leadership roles, eventually director of software development, vice president R&D. And so I know what it's like to get Agile working as a manager, as an executive within organizations. And then I switched gears and started working as a trainer and consultant, helping organizations from the outside. And what I realized very quickly was that Agile, while insufficient for helping organizations evolve. And that's why I spent the last 10 years in the world of culture and leadership to understand, well, how do we help create environments where Agile can flourish? How do we help leaders show up in ways that will allow Agile to flourish? So that's what I want to share with you during our time here. Now, by the way, the company is Shift 314. You've probably heard of this famous number pi, 3.14, right? So that's what the 314 is an homage to. Pi talks about the universal, timeless principles of mathematics. Our organization is talking about the universal, timeless principles of human beings and how human beings organize themselves in systems, right? We're actually just talking about some fundamental patterns like, hey, did you notice? This is how things work. Because we're dropping down to the level of the construct of basic human functioning, things like the ego, motivation, things like that. Now, I wrote my first book on Agile in 2012, and it was called an Agile Adoption Transformation Survival Guide, working with organizational culture. So even back then, this is almost 10 years ago, I had this really clear sense of like, wait a second, we need to look at a bigger world. We need to understand what culture is because Agile itself is a culture system. Fast forward 2021, the new book, Leading Beyond Change, A Practical Guide to Business Agility, is not about Agile. It is about Agile, and it's not about Agile. It's this understanding that it's about how do we create an environment where Agile can actually function? How do we, as change makers, lead change in a way that's aligned with Agile, that's aligned to creating high performance environments, which is a much broader perspective than just Agile. So that's the journey we're on here together. All right, so where do I want to go next? All right. Now, there's this famous saying, what got you here may not get you where you want to go. Right? If you think about all the things you've learned, all the things you've mastered in your career, what got you where you are may not get you where you actually want to go, where you want to end up. And ultimately, what we're dealing with at the core when we're trying to introduce Agile in organization organizational systems move out of industrial management. There's this on this planet. And Agile, if we look at it, is really trying to create this antidote, but it's not a sufficient antidote. So we need to have a larger tool set to help people shift out of this fundamental paradigm. And we see it at all kinds of organizations. We see it, like, especially in leading organizations in the Bay Area, Apple, Google, Facebook. Like, there's a deterioration. There's advancement in how they're functioning. We're also seeing this regression towards traditional management practices that lead to disengaged workers, all sorts of challenges, and so on. And this is because we have this core industrial management paradigm that's deeply baked in. So our view is we're living in the legacy of a global disengagement epidemic, right? Even in startups, we see people. And so the question, they're somewhere on the spectrum. Where are the people in the organization? Are they really checked out? Are they partly checked out? Is everyone really showing up with fire in their belly, day in, day out, highly motivated, highly engaged? And the answer is, in most organizations, that's not actually happening. And when we look at it, Agile is at best part of the cure. It's not the whole cure. It's at best part of the cure. Now, when we look at the core of what we need to change, it's actually the leadership system. And if we turn to things that have been very beautiful, servant leadership, it's been around for 50 years, it is actually demonstrated to be wholly insufficient. It is not a sufficiently powerful enough paradigm to help us break out of this global epidemic that we have. So we're going to talk about, what is the evolution of servant leadership? What is the quintessence of what is actually the essence? So it's not that there's anything wrong with servant leadership. It's just that it's too vague, too diffused. People have found it insufficient, and these people are starting to bolt on different things that they think are the thing. So there's no longer one single definition of what servant leadership it is. It's almost like everyone has their own flavor, their own definition based on their personal belief of what's most important. Now, in our talk today, we're going to talk about what leading beyond change means. And we're going on this journey to understand that leadership, culture, and organizational change are not three subject domains. They're not three independent subject domains. They're actually deeply interrelated. And I'm hoping you'll see what we're sharing here is that success with all things depend on an integrated understanding. That's where we're going, is an integrated understanding how these three are fully interlocked concepts. So what is the journey we're talking about? This journey away from command and control, from traditional industrial management that takes us beyond servant leadership. What is this journey? So we can understand this journey as follows. This diagram talks about the journey, both at an organizational level, as a leadership level. It's moving from traditional ways of working to evolutionary ways of working. Now, traditional ways of working we think of as business as usual. If your organization right now is operating in anything like business as usual, over here on this side, that is the definition of low performance. That is the definition of low adaptability, fragile systems. Evolutionary ones operate very differently. They're much more adaptable. There's a place where the people have fire in their belly. People are showing up and acting like adults. They're being treated like adults. But the question is, how do we get from where we are now, which is somewhere over here, to where we hope to be, closer towards that adaptable organization that will allow us to thrive in this rapidly changing world, VUCA world that we live in. That's really the journey. And as you can see here, that we're talking about multiple levels of evolution. There's how do we understand and perceive reality around us? How do we think about leadership, and how do leaders show up? How is power used within an organization? How are people treated in a fundamental way? And what is our organizational culture? How do we approach change? And finally, how do we see and understand the results within our organizational system? Now, I'm going to get myself out of the way here. Let me fade myself out. Hold on. So what we're seeing here is essentially that we all know, I mean, you've all heard this. Oh, you need to run experiments. You need to operate over here. Don't just follow plans. You need to run experiments, try things out, and so on. But if we look at that, the ability within our organizational system to do that, we need a much higher ability to navigate complexity, right? If our organization can't navigate complexity, we're not going to be able to run those experiments. And then looking deeper into this topic, what we see here is that, well, how do we function? How do people function that they can run experiments? Well, they need to be psychologically safe in order to run experiments. And to understand that it's not that your organization's safe or not safe, it's that safety is a spectrum. It's a reflection of your state of evolution of your organizational system. So now we're starting to say, well, wait a second, this evolutionary journey is tied into some very important metrics. What is our ability to navigate complexity? What's going on with psychological safety? And what we see here is that we can map this in to say, well, look, this journey is about how do we evolve psychological safety for our people so that they can actually navigate complexity. So here you can see I've circled some of the words: navigate complexity and safety. I've given you very concretely two of these dimensions of this journey. That's what we're speaking about here, is how do we start to make this shift? How do we start to move from where we are now, somewhere on this journey, to where we hope to be, an adaptable organization filled with adaptable, highly engaged, motivated people. So I'm going to go to this poll, and my question for you in this poll is, where is your organization? Just think about your organization right now. Actually, I'll show you the question first. Where's your organization if we map it from 1 to 10? A 1 is over here, and a 10 is over here. Highly adaptable organization. 1 is, wow, it's struggling to make changes and be effective. So if you think about your organization right now, in terms of where it is in the journey, its ability to navigate complexity, the levels of psychological safety, and so on, just take a moment to reflect, where is your organization right now? And what I'd like you to do, let me make sure this is coming up. I'm going to ask you to go to this URL, polev.com/orgs. Let me pull this up here. Right, I think you can see it at the top here, polev.com/orgs. If someone wants to successfully navigate there and put in the chat for me, I'd appreciate that. But what I'd like you to do is go to this URL and just answer this question: where is your organization right now? What level would you assess it to be at? I'll just give people a moment here. I see there's 1 result in, 2 results. Thank you so much, everyone. We'll just pause here for a moment to get people to get their poll results. Just where is your organization from 1 to 10 on this journey from traditional to evolutionary? Okay, so this is what we're seeing here. Whoops, this is interesting. I thought I saw more results than that. All right, so what we're seeing here is answers from 1 to 8. Now, what is that telling us? The first thing it's telling us immediately is that every organization that people are in right now are somewhere on their journey. So all of us are on this journey. That's a universal characteristic for all of this. The other aspect is that none of us are done, that there's still space for all of our organizations to grow. And while our specific next step for growth might be the same, the patterns are the same. We're growing to higher levels of psychological safety. We're creating a shift in our leadership. We're increasing our ability to navigate complexity, right? So what we've seen here is that those organizations that rest on their laurels and say, hey, we're done, we're good, it means they are not on their evolutionary journey. They're not actually evolving, right? So no matter where your organization is right now, that's one question. The other question, is it still evolving? Is it still making progress to become more adaptable, have a higher level of evolutionary fitness? All right, so let's continue. Okay, so this is supposed to draw. Okay, so how do we understand this journey? How do we understand this journey of evolution? we're talking about evolving your organizational system. How do we understand what this really means for you and your organization? What does it really mean? Well, the funny thing is, filled with adaptable people. And when you think about your organization today, let's draw your organization today, it operates in a certain way. Let's draw it as this blue triangle. And when you think about your organization today, it's actually a reflection of all the people. So it's a reflection of all the workers. Let's draw them in here. I won't draw all your workers in. And as well as the top leadership, middle management, and so on. Right? It's a reflection of all the people in your organization. How people behave in your organization determines how your organization functions. Like, this is kind of some basic common sense. Now, what's happened is we're in this world where people want business agility, they want agile, because they say, well, wait a second, the way we're operating today, the aggregate output of our organizational system is insufficient. We want an organization that's way more successful, way more adaptable. Let's draw that in. The one that has business agility, has intrinsically, oops, I don't really like that triangle. Let me try that again. We're going a bit fast there. All right. So we want a different kind of organizational system, one that's shown by these wavy lines, much more adaptable, higher performance. And then we pause and we say, well, wait a second. Do we have all the same behaviors that we have over here? And the answer is no. We're going to have different behaviors. For our organizational system to function in a more evolved way, be more adaptable, we need more adaptable people here. Learning, growing, responding, discovering new ways of functioning. And it's not just the people at the bottom, and this is the trap with Agiles, can you go fix our people? But we actually need more evolved behaviors at all levels. So there's no way your organization can become more adaptable without having an evolution of all the people. And most importantly, is what happens with these leaders. Unless these leaders at the very top of the organization evolve to become these leaders, there's no way your organization can actually evolve from its current level of evolutionary fitness, its current place from traditional to evolutionary, unless the leaders evolve. Because everybody needs to go on the journey. Right? And this is the fundamental thing that I think is missing, is that we need to have a people-centric approach. I mean, Agile, if you think about the shortest definition, is about people over process. So what I'm speaking to is the very core of Agile is, well, what is a people-centric approach to creating this kind of change? And then we come back to this thought about, well, leadership, well, this is like this is a core topic here, is that organizational evolution follows personal evolution. So everybody needs to evolve, including the leaders. And if the leaders are not evolving, we can't go on this journey, because everyone needs to go on this journey. So what we're speaking about is, what we need is an approach that will allow us to create a shift from a traditional organization towards more of an evolutionary one, which actually is what we've seen is requires an integrated shift from leadership, in culture, in strategy, in tactics, a shift in how we function across all levels of the organization. So now that we have that understanding, we're going to dive into evolutionary leadership. What is it? And we're going to define it, and we're going to dive into it in a bit more detail. Evolutionary leadership is the choice to evolve oneself and develop the capabilities needed to evolve an organization. So we're just going back to this diagram to say, well, wait a second. An evolutionary leader is one that's choosing to go on this journey, to evolve, to grow from a current state of functioning to a more evolved state of functioning. And what we're seeing here is that it requires both doing and being. While it does, of course, require some very practical skills, different patterns of interaction, different knowledge, and so on, more importantly, it's about an inner shift in our being. It's about showing up as a different kind of human being, a different kind of leader, one that is psychologically safe, is stable, is able to build other leaders around us, which is more than a tactic or a trick or a technique. It's a fundamentally different way of treating people that comes from the core of our being. Now, some characteristics of evolutionary leaders to give you a sense of this is people who are focused on their own self-evolution, understanding and overcoming the limiting factors of the ego, which we all possess, really at every moment leading by example, developing their own psychological safety, understanding that psychological safety is itself a transmission. It's a transmission of a way of being. And valuing people with every interaction. And ultimately, and this is the measure of our success as a leader, is what is our ability to develop leaders around us? Because as we're able to develop leaders around us, then we can support others going on the journey. It's one thing for us to go on the journey, but how well are we equipped to help others go on the journey, to show up as leaders, so we can have leaders at all levels of our organizational system. Now, some of you are thinking, well, oh, this is about those people changing. But no, this diagram is a fractal. This drawing could be for your team. It could be for your department. It could be for whatever fractal or level of the organization you're functioning at. So we'll go into a bit more detail. And one of the patterns we have in the book is talking about moving from leadership development to self-evolution. Leadership development's been around for a long time, as we need to develop our leaders, give them certain skills, and so on. And what we're inviting you to consider is something beyond just ordinary leadership development. What we're calling self-evolution, the willingness and the choice to evolve oneself. And we'll be very concrete about what we mean by that. Now, many of you may be familiar with Carol Dweck's work, and she has this really amazing concept, and it's captured in the first two panels here, is that if you think about people in your organization, some of them have what's called a fixed mindset. When they encounter a challenge or problem, they think, oh, well, that's it, I'm stuck. I can't really do anything about this, or, people in this situation blame others and so on. Now, what Carol talks about is what's called a growth mindset. She coins it as a growth mindset, where people say, hey, this is interesting, what can I learn from this? What can I discover from this information? And they welcome feedback. Now, what we're inviting you to here, which is our definition, which is moving beyond a growth mindset to what we call an evolutionary mindset, where it's not just how do I help grow, but how do I evolve myself as a human being? And when we encounter a challenge or difficulty, we say, well, wait, what does this say about me? What does this say about my own limit to my evolution as a leader? Right? It's a much, much deeper level of probing. And I'll give you an example of this. Let's imagine there's a production outage at your organization and people are there to figure out, well, what happened? And they're in a meeting. The people in the fixed mindset are going to blame others. They're going to avoid responsibility and not really be open to finding solutions. People in a growth mindset, in agile teams that run retrospectives, you could say this is an example of a growth mindset. They're saying, well, this is great. What can we learn from this? How do we change our process? What do we discover about this? Right? That's what a growth mindset is. People are opening to discovering new information. But people who are in an evolutionary mindset operate in a different, more evolved way. And they're saying, well, wait a second. How did I personally contribute to this outage? Where was there a moment where I could have avoided this by taking action? Or where did I have an action that actually contributed to this? So it's a level of deeper introspection and personal insight than we normally see. But this is what it takes, right? When people are willing to evolve themselves, then we can go on this kind of journey. Then that's what it's actually about. Teams holding retrospectives and having little discoveries will give you a small improvement, but to actually go on this journey requires people who are willing to look at how are they not showing up at their best. Now, I'll give you an example of why this is so important. Let's imagine your team has challenges around collaboration. There's a limited amount of success you can get from just a growth mindset, because that'll be like, okay, what can we do? What patterns can we apply? And it'll give you some benefit. But ultimately, the root of collaboration challenges are with our ego. There are selfish nature, behavioral patterns, and so on. So unless people are ready to dive into an evolutionary mindset of seeing how they personally are the block in their team, there's no way you can actually get to high levels of team collaboration, high levels of team performance. So this is like a critical success factor for creating high performance. And there's a really great book called Building a Deliberately Developmental Organization by Keegan Leahy that goes into a lot of detail about the importance of people who are ready to learn about themselves. So I'm going to go to this poll and ask you this question. And the question is, oh, there we go. What is the mindset? What is the mindset of most people in your organization? What is the mindset of most people in your organization? Just take a moment to put in your answer. And just click on one of these boxes: fixed mindset, growth mindset, evolutionary mindset. So growth mindset, people are ready to learn, usually about the external world. Evolutionary says they're ready to learn about themselves. They're ready to look at their own limitations. What's the main difference? Just take a moment to respond. Where are most people in your workplace? What are you seeing? Like, how are people showing up in your work environment? So thank you for your responses. And what we're seeing here is very interesting. We're seeing answers, I think we see 5 here in the fixed mindset. We're seeing 5 in the growth mindset. So what that's telling you is, where at the state of evolution are there? Where is your organization from traditional over here to evolutionary? And this is like a key factor in determining what's happening with your organizational system. So we start to, and this is what we're hoping you'll get out of this session here, is we're giving you a way to sort of laser into what are the key variables that are needed to unlock your ability to create a shift in your organizational system. So what we're hoping you're taking away from this is this understanding, and we'll come back to this diagram, that your organization's somewhere on this journey. The leaders, if you look at the aggregate of leaders in your organization, are somewhere on this journey. You personally, as a leader, are somewhere on this journey. Right? So this is how we can use this in multiple dimensions to understand what's happening. Now, we've looked at a couple of these different variables. We've looked at self-evolution. Actually, sorry, that's just where we were right now. We're looking at this one. So what we're doing is we're just giving you a really quick taste. There's a lot more to say about the topic of self-evolution. We're giving you one little path through this tree of what does it mean. All right, so let's continue. We're going to give you one more piece to give you a sense of what is this journey like and what are some of the key factors. And all of you are here. You're all invested in learning. You're here during your evening listening to this webinar, and you've probably been on Zoom calls all day, but you're here. You're choosing to learn. But there's something which we see in high-performance organizations which goes beyond learning, which is unlearning. Unlearning. So what is that? So unlearning is a model, and one tool, one way to express this. There's a lot to say about this topic. But the tool that you can use is to question your assumptions. Now, you might be going, well, Michael, what assumptions do you mean? And quite literally, every single thing you believe right now that's in your head is an assumption. I'll repeat this. Everything that you believe about the world, about organizational high performance, about Agile, about how you show up as a leader, how you show up as a human being around other people, is an assumption. Now, if you're familiar with the industry, you'll know that in startup, we treat all of our assumptions like a backlog, and we run experiments to validate them and discover what is it that I believe right now that's not true. Because as we discovered with Lean Startup, that's why startups fail, because they have assumptions that are not true. And this is what's going on with us as leaders. The biggest problem we have is not the things we know that are true, but the things that we know are assumptions that are actually not true. So a key characteristic of somebody who's moving more towards an evolutionary mindset is this willing to question everything. You could call it keeping an open mind. You could call it the beginner's mindset. And so this is the challenge, right? And when we're really deeply in this place of unlearning and this willingness to question our assumptions, it's pretty much impossible to get into an argument with anyone. So a sign that you're in more of a traditional mindset, traditional organization, is that you get pulled into arguments. Once you are willing to question your assumptions, you say, oh yeah, I could be wrong. Yeah, this person might be right. That's fine. Oh, this person's not really open to listen to my perspective. Okay, that's fine. No problem, right? But that's what it is. Like once we start to operate from a more evolved stance, disruptive, damaging patterns like arguing go away completely, because we're just in this open place of, well, everyone's okay to believe whatever they want to believe, and what, I could be wrong. I really want to hear what you have to say. Wow, this is really challenging me, but keep on going because I really like to understand where you're coming from, right? So it's a very fundamentally different place about seeing ourselves. So I'm going to play a video to give you a sense of like, well, what do we really mean by learning? So let's watch this together. Whoops.
No. We'll never get it out now.
So certain are you? Always with you it cannot be done. Do you nothing that I say?
Master, moving stones around is one thing. This is totally different.
No, no different. Only different in your mind. You must unlearn what you have learned.
So here we see Yoda trying to impart wisdom to Luke Skywalker to help him understand that the challenge that he faces in creating the success he wants is actually his ability to unlearn the things that he believes it can't be done. It needs to be done this way. These are the laws of physics. Things only work this way. And so what I'm inviting you to consider is the possibility and start to be very curious right now. What are the things that you believe right now that are not true? What are the things you believe right now that are actually sabotaging your success? So that's the invitation. So we're talking about this journey from traditional to evolutionary as a key way of understanding creating organizational high performance. And we've just talked about unlearning. We've talked about self-evolution. We've talked about safety. We've talked about navigating complexity. To talk about how there are all these different dimensions. We've only touched on a few here. There's so many more dimensions. And for us to actually create a coherent shift in our organizational system requires an understanding of much more than just Agile. It requires a coherent shift understanding of what is this journey actually all about, to move away from this command and control mindset, these traditional organizations, because that's really what we're doing. That's really what it's all about. So the most important thing, and this is kind of my closing thought here, is for you to reflect on your evolutionary journey, your organization's evolutionary journey. The first thing is, what is your organization's current rate of evolution on this journey? And what are its evolutionary capabilities? How able is it to evolve right now? And the second thing is, well, what is your current rate of leadership evolution? How rapidly you're making progress, and what are your current evolutionary capabilities? So our view at Shift 314 is that, well, making some success here or there, well, that's interesting and valuable. But the more important thing, and this is the kind of the deeper work we were pointing to and inviting you to, is understanding that the most important thing that we can focus on is me personally, all of us together as human beings, as an organizational system. What is our current rate of evolution, and what are our evolutionary capabilities? And how do we acquire new evolutionary capabilities? And we've shared a few things here that would give you a sense of, well, these are the evolutionary capabilities you need to create the success that you hope, to create and really accelerate your journey of evolution. So if you've enjoyed this, if you find any value here, please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. If you want to get a bit more of a taste of this on our website, let me get myself out of the way here. On our website, shift314.com/blog, we've got lots of interesting topics like autonomous, self-organizing teams don't work, leading with an agile mindset, and so on, that really talk about some of the core topics we've talked here, as well as tie-ins to an agile frame of reference and frame of mind. You're welcome as well to go back to some of our books. An Agile Adoption Transformation Survival Guide. I wrote this almost a decade ago, but it's still a valuable read. It's actually available as a free download from our website. I'll follow up with the organizers to make sure we send out some links for all these things, including this. And of course, Audrey and I co-authored the book Emotional Science, because it turns out we've been lied to about how our emotional systems work. And when we discover the truth for ourselves of how it actually functions, it actually unlocks our success and our evolutionary capabilities. Now, probably the biggest invitation I have for you if you want to go deeper is the book Leading Beyond Change, which we've just released this year. And it's actually a series of business patterns to lead organizational evolution, to go on this journey from traditional to evolutionary. The patterns take you through, well, how do we understand reality? How do we see results, both just short-term and long-term? What is organizational culture, and how do we fully understand that? And what does it mean to have a people-centric organization, truly? And what are the traps? There's a lot of attention to the paradox of power. How do we break this command and control habit? But mostly it's about how do we evolve our organizational system? And how do we ourselves evolve as leaders to create the success we hope for? And there's a free download on our website. You're welcome to grab that. It's also available in audiobook. Now, everything we're talking about here is part of what we call the self framework, the Shift 314 Evolutionary Leadership Framework. And this is really like kind of the umbrella of everything that we've created. Now, the tagline for the framework is very interesting. It's about scaling excellence with people. So if you're interested in scaling excellence with people, and I think most people in the Agile environment would be interested, because Agile is about people over process. But if that's what is of interest to you, it's understanding that your organization has a DNA. And that DNA could be applied at your team level, department level, and so on. There's a DNA fragment. And it's about how do we understand that DNA and how do we evolve it using tactics and strategy which are commonplace in agile transformations. But not just that, but from a culture and leadership perspective. And what I've been sharing here is kind of the core and the lifeblood of the self framework. I've shared maps to orient and understand what's happening, principles to reason about laws of cause and effect, models to analyze what's happening and reason about ourselves and the world, and most importantly, tools that we can use in a very practical way to create the shifts that we're hoping for. Now, some of you may be going, well, what does that have to do with my existing framework? Your existing framework is fine, because the self is a pluggable framework. So whether you're using agile, digital, lean, safe, whatever the flavor is, it doesn't matter, because we're dropping to the layer beneath to unlock the success that we need as people. So if you're interested in the self level one training, kind of the basic foundation level, we have Leading Beyond Change training coming up. We haven't announced the dates yet, but this is coming up early in the new year. And this will actually be a licensable training, because I know there are people there who probably are trainers and looking for ways to help leaders understand business agility, to understand this journey from traditional to evolutionary. And of course, through our flagship Certified Agile Leadership Training, which we've been doing, I think, for 5 years now. I think we were the leading trainer around the world for this. So if you're interested in any of that, please feel free to follow up with that. So I'm going to move to Q&A now. Thank you so much, everyone. I know we got a small group, so I'm really looking forward to your questions so we can dive in deeper on this. This is actually my favorite part, is the questions. So I'm going to stop here, and I'm going to turn it over to anyone who'd like to unmute and ask a question. Over to you. Who'd like to go first?
I have a question, Michael. I'll go ahead and bite. It may not be the best question, but I'll go ahead and dive in. In your poll, I did notice that really no one was over in the evolutionary area for the most part. So what would the transition look like from growth to evolutionary? How, as a coach, would we, and it's probably a big question, but how, as a coach, can we bring somebody from, the idea of like using retrospectives and continuous learning like you would in Agile to the evolutionary? What would the kinds of questions and actions that the coach would need to take?
Yeah, so probably the most important thing about any of this work is that we're doing it ourselves. We are doing it ourselves. We are investing in our own growth, like really in our own evolution, really looking intrinsically, where am I showing up? And what happens when we're doing that, it'll start to naturally have us create and act as an attractor to invite other people, right? We'll just say we'll say things like, "Hey, you know what? I noticed I did this thing. I'm so sorry." Or we'll even be more bold and say, "Hey, look, you know what? I'm working through this edge that I have, this limitation, where I have this behavior pattern I'm trying to break through. So if you see me doing it, please let me know." So when we start to show up as that kind of person, we're not acting as a coach anymore. We're actually acting as a leader, right? And it's like one of the key things is agile coaching. I'll be really honest. Coaching is a very beautiful concept, but on the journey towards high performance, it's only going to get you this far. When you have somebody because in order to help our people, help leaders evolve, we need to be leaders operating beyond their level. So in terms of the diagram, let me pull this up. In terms of this map from traditional to evolutionary, the way we can help people is we show up in a more evolved state. So if our leader that we're working with, they're here, they're let's say at a 3 or a 4, we need to be operating at a 5. We'll naturally, through our being, act as an attractor because we'll be showing up and operating very differently.
Got it. Thank you. That's helpful. Yes, and I've seen that in other leadership classes as well. That you be the leader, and then that brings people along for the journey. So thank you.
Yeah. So that's the thing. I think a lot of emphasis, and I think it's a kind of a tragedy with the term agile coach, is a really trap because to lead an agile transformation requires that you be an evolved leader. Is you lead with an agile mindset. An agile mindset is over here, right? Adaptable, changeable, constantly learning. Like that's where an agile mindset is. So unless we're leading with an evolved mindset, how can we possibly transform anything? We can't transform a rock. I mean, like nothing. You can't do anything until, and as human beings, we're because we have an ego, we're blinded to our own functioning. Most of the unlearning that happens with people is they realize, wait a second, I'm not showing up as the leader I thought I did. Because we all have cognitive bias, we all have illusionary superiority. Like the ego has hoodwinked us into thinking we're not the problem, everyone else is the problem. When we start to see how, wait a second, I'm not showing up in an evolved way, how can I ask anyone to do this? And just funny story, that's how I got to where I am now. I woke up one moment, I said, wait a second, the only way I can help these organizations be successful with Agile is I got to help these leaders. And then I looked at myself in the mirror, I said, well, Michael, can you help them? And the answer I got back was, no, Michael, you are a well-intentioned asshole. The way you're showing up, there's no way you could possibly help them. And I had a choice. Either I could evolve, or I could give up on my dream of helping organizations. And since that moment, I've evolved, and I'm not the same person I was at all. Like I was designed to talk to machines. I was the kind of person that you don't let near people. You just slide the pizza under the door. I mean that. So like it's been really just an incredible journey, and I have so much more, such a deeper sense of peace and intrinsic stability and value in myself. It's been the biggest gift in the world. And this is what we see with people that go through our programs, is that they realize, wait a second, this isn't just about the workplace. This is about how I show up as a human being, and it impacts all the relationships with their kids, with their partner, with their family members. And it's just such a beautiful thing to see people discover this deeper value of life as a human being.
Michael, I have a follow-up question for you related to that topic. What's your impression, or what do you have any say anything to the role of vulnerability? A lot of leaders have problems sharing vulnerability. and kind of like, that should strike a chord, right? So what are your thoughts on that? And how do we help people become more, to face, I think that's a key part of facing reality, is also to face one's own vulnerability.
Yeah, that's a fantastic question.
Oh,
I know there's the power of vulnerability. Sorry, can you hear me okay?
yeah, you were just breaking up there a little bit.
Yeah, sorry about that. So the key factor here is people will be vulnerable when they have high psychological safety. So now, in order to answer this question, we have to get to a higher level, a deeper level. What does psychological safety mean?
Mm-hmm.
So psychological safety, and you don't often hear this, has two different elements. One's external, the other one's internal.
Mm-hmm.
When I, as a leader, have a high level of psychological safety, I can be vulnerable, no problem, because I'm safe. So the question really then becomes, how do we help leaders become vulnerable? Not by telling them to become vulnerable, but by either creating an environment, like a constructed environment, like a workshop or a lab, where they can experience a higher level of psychological safety. That's one of the structures that we do in our workshops and so on. And the kind of things people even share in our level 1 trainings is incredible, because we put effort and time into constructing a safe environment. So that's one thing, is what we want to do is help leaders develop their own intrinsic psychological safety, because psychological safety is a transmission. And what we don't understand is how fear is running rampant in our lives, in our deep sort of, either we're conscious of it or it's in our subconscious, and it's taking us out. It's actually what's eating away at our intelligence, sub-optimize our performance, and so on. And what I will suggest you look at is, I actually have a very powerful solution to this, which is called the Vas Model, VAST, and it's on our website, the Vas Model. And essentially, in a gist, we can help others be vulnerable by being vulnerable ourselves, by modeling it. We can also help others by creating an authentic connection with them, or by supporting creating a safe environment, right? Which is vulnerable. So it's a gradual process, and that there are levels of vulnerability. So we get people to start to share something that's less vulnerable and have them build up, right, as a way to help them take them through the cycle again and again and again. But really, it's a muscle that requires training. Which, of course, is tied to this whole journey.
Right.
So it's not like an independent variable. It's not like, oh, I can just do a home run and I can solve psychological safety. I'm done over here, right? No. There are all these independent, interrelated variables that need to get moved collectively. And ultimately, we talked about this as a shift in consciousness, right? To show up in our internal fabric of our being in a more evolved state of functioning.
Yeah. Definitely agree. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your question.
Michael, I had a question.
Mm-hmm.
In the chat, I wrote about something you said right at the start was how to create an environment where agility will flourish.
Mm-hmm.
And my instant reaction was around this statement I've heard so many times. Agility is not the outcome. It's not the reason. It's just something we might use to get to where we want to go. Even with that thought, what you said was somehow resonating with me as useful and helpful. So I'm trying to pull apart this statement that you made, and yet the outcome we're looking for maybe to be more purposeful as a business, perhaps, or whether performance related or linked to their purpose. But when you mention about where agility will flourish, I'm a little lost, I suppose, because of those conflicting statements. If that helps.
Yeah, thank you. This is actually a good one. We're actually the people on the planet who talked about asking why for Agile, and what that means, and why Agile is not the goal, and Agile is just a means to an end, and so on. But I think what's happened is because people have mistranslated, misunderstood, there's a lot of confusion around it. And I think your question actually expresses that. Now, I'll explain it very simply. If somebody says they want Agile, we'll say that's fine, great. Why do you want Agile? What is it you want through that? And immediately, what we help people realize is that nobody actually wants agile. Nobody on this planet actually wants agile. Nobody wants digital. Nobody wants lean. What actually people want is high performance. And they define it differently. Some people say, well, it's more about having engaged workers. Some people say it's more about faster time to market. But everybody wants high performance. And so I think roughly business agility equals high performance. Business agility means that a business that's adaptable and nimble and so on, right? Agile means an organization that meets the Agile manifesto. Or if, dumbed down, it meets, SAFe or some Agile process, right? So actually, there is only one Agile maturity metric, which is, have you figured out yet that Agile is just the means to an end? And it's focusing on the larger end that's beyond Agile. And so I think that's where a lot of people get mixed up, is they get halfway there and they get half the message. But that probably is a quick synopsis of the whole message. Does that help, or does that lead to more questions?
I suppose the resolution I came to was agility is a means to an end. And if what you're after is, as you described, high performance, whether it be business agility or and so forth, the best answer we have for that at the moment is to consider some of these agile principles and whether or not they're going to help you get to the end that you're after. And so, therefore, the link then, whether it's right or not, is creating an environment where agility will flourish is more likely to see if agility is a thing that's going to work for you. Because if it's not going to flourish, then obviously it's not going to work for you anyway.
Yeah, so I think you're almost there. The part that I make as a very nuanced differentiator is nobody wants agile. Because agile is a very specific thing that's very limited and bound. But a lot of organizations want agility, which is what they're looking for. They want the ability to thrive in the VUCA world. So a lot of organizations are seeking agility and more, but agility is not the only thing. Agility, adaptability, higher throughput, high performance, like these are universal terms that we see across the world, across all cultures. So I think that's probably where I think business agility is actually a good coin for a high performance organization, which is what people are seeking.
I have one other question while I got the mic, which is unrelated. And that was, what made the biggest difference to you personally when you went on your change journey to really discover, about your own ego and the journey that you needed to sort of be able to be more of an evolutionary mindset? Of all of the things that you did, where was that biggest shift?
Well, so, I guess the first thing is, the journey continues. I think that I'm not done. The moment we think we're done as a leader, I'm done evolving, is the moment we stop growing and the moment we're actually in the greatest jeopardy. So that's kind of the first comment there is my journey continues. There are many moments. I think the one I described earlier in this call. Another one was when I read these words in Brene Brown's book, her first book, which I think is her best book by far. And it was this phrase: you can only be kind to others to the extent that you can be kind to yourself. So as a father of 3 children, as somebody who's working in Agile, which is about people over process, this struck me right to the core of my being. Because I don't know about you, but I had this internal critic. I call you shit. Anyone know this internal critic? Little voice that's criticizing, judging ourselves, and so on. That's how kind I was to myself. And the statement is, well, Michael, you can only be kind to others to the extent that you can be kind to myself. And I was failing. I was failing at being kind to myself, which meant the truth was I was failing at being kind to others, my kids, the people I worked with, people I was trying to help and coach and mentor. So this is around the time of the realization about the well-intentioned asshole, right? And so this is, I had good intentions, but I was an asshole. I wasn't able to be kind. So this is probably my invitation, is to start to say, well, wait a second. Really, when we come back to it, we're all trapped. We're all deeply trapped. This is what I'm saying, is we don't understand how deep this command and control habit goes, how deeply ingrained it is to our being, and we're not even aware that it's operating, and it's causing so much damage. And that little internal critic, that's a clue that we are oppressing ourselves on the inside. And how can we liberate anyone on the outside when we're oppressing ourselves on the inside every single day, many times an hour? How can it possibly work? That's why we're saying a shift of consciousness is needed. That's why we're saying it's so critical to have this evolutionary mindset. It's not like it's like a nice to have. It's like there is no other path. Like I've been trying to optimize, find the shortest shortcuts my whole life, the fastest, most rapid means to high performance. And you know what I found out again and again is that I am the most rapid means. My own self-evolution is the most rapid means to creating high performance. And it just comes up again and again. So it's like, you know, I just can't argue with facts. So that's why I've doubled down on my journey.
Thanks for sharing. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for your questions. Someone else like to open up and ask questions?
I have one. You teach a lot of leadership courses, and I wonder, when leaders come into those, what are the like top one or two things that they say is difficult for them? Like, because if you were to bring back that picture of the tree and the Jenga tower, it's like leaders are already so stretched thin with all kinds of stuff that they have to take care of. I could imagine that they're like completely overwhelmed, but maybe that's not what they bring to you.
Yeah. So I actually, that's a really, really good question. I don't have the diagram here, it's in the book, but it's really about this challenge and tension between production and production capacity. In the traditional world that we're in the traditional world we're in over here, people are being asked to focus on results, on production. How do you get results now, this quarter, and so on? They're not being asked to focus on growth, on an evolution in production capability. And I think that's the biggest tragedy. It's really the math is really simple. The math is blindingly simple. When you focus on production capability, when you focus on investing in the future, your future will get better. I mean, it's really, really simple math, right? But the truth is most organizational systems pay lip service at best, and all the focus, all the pressure is on getting these projects done. And well-intentioned, well-knowledgeable, intelligent leaders get sucked into this business as usual, traditional management paradigm that sucks the life out of organizations and creates disengaged workers, death march projects, and so on. I think that's the single biggest challenge. People are so busy getting the work done, endless meetings, that where do they have time to work on their own evolution as a leader? Where do they have time to nurture and help evolve the people around them? And they hear caught up in the trap, kind of like this catch-22. This catch-22, we're so focused on trying to get things done now, we don't put aside any time for the future. And you know, in Agile, it's the same problem of teams not writing unit tests. We know that once we have a stable set of unit tests, there's so much more time available for getting new products done, but it takes time to build up the suite of unit tests, this investment in production capability until we're stable enough to really launch. Probably the single biggest challenge. I think the other one is that most leaders are unaware, so going to item 2, is they're unaware of how stuck in this command and control mindset they are. Like our default egoic assumption is, hey, I'm good, right? And this is the story of every Agile transformation. We have the executive team saying, hey, we're good. Can you go fix our people? You know, and you know, if you're, you know, a large consulting company, you'll take $20 million and go try to fix all the people, but the mess will still be the same because the leaders haven't changed. The leaders still have the same mindset, and they still have the same command and control behaviors, the same levels of disengagement and so on. So I say that's the second big one. Is there a lack of ability to see ourselves and the lack of evolutionary capabilities, the lack of the ability to actually evolve ourselves. And so, I mean, in our view, everyone is innocent. Because to my understanding, and I've read every single book I could possibly get, the knowledge for how to shift culture until this book is here has not been there. It's all been pretty weak sauce. The knowledge for how to understand my role as a leader until evolutionary leadership, that we've coined it, has not been there. So I see as everyone, in terms of their failure and inability to lead high performance organizations, to create leaders around them, is normal and okay and totally forgivable. I don't think anyone's at fault because the knowledge simply hasn't been there.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
While we're thinking about any more questions, I quickly launched our polls. Michael, you can take a deep breath for a couple minutes. And I would like to collect the feedback for the tonight event. We're all here to learn. And if anyone has any other questions to Michael, please go ahead. Don't keep him waiting.
Michael, I have the question and wrote the question in the chat. Is there a difference from evolutionary mindset and self-accountability? But before you answer that question, my own journey, I led a team of 13 different departments, not in corporate, in a different field, which I won't mention for privacy purposes. But I want to thank you for giving the name to evolutionary leadership. I'm big on Greenleaf 1971 servant leadership, and I found myself moving into evolutionary leadership. And you're absolutely correct. It's because of your own self-growth, right? But I introduced models that were very much part of Greenleaf's model in the particular field that I work in. And so what I saw was tremendous growth, tremendous accomplishment of the areas that you talk about: self-evolution, overcoming ego, psychological safety, etc. I know that I was not in a psychologically safe space, not with my team as their leader, but as a leader amongst other leaders in our organization. And so my biggest frustration was I couldn't get other leaders to move along in this evolutionary mindset. So if you could please address, is evolutionary mindset the same as self-accountability? Yes or no? And if so, what is it? And then how do you get other leaders to move with you?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So let me go back here. All right, let me start here. So the first question is about evolutionary mindset, and this is the same as self-accountability. So self-accountability is a very, very important factor, but I'd say that can lead to an evolutionary mindset. Like holding oneself on account, saying, yeah, I'm responsible, but that doesn't mean I'm going to grow and evolve from it. So I'd say it's very related, very, very important, absolutely critical, but I'd say it's kind of it would be encompassed by an evolutionary mindset. Unless we hold ourselves accountable, we're not going to evolve. All right, so that's why
it's a variable. Would you say that it's a variable of evolutionary mindset?
Say it's included within that.
Okay.
It's included within that. I think it shows up probably more. I'd say it's walking the talk,
yes,
or leading by example.
Yes.
That's probably where I'd say it has a stronger affinity in some ways.
Okay.
That accountability is a very important topic, but most important is, do we hold ourselves to account as a leader?
Yeah.
And do we publicly display that and say, you know what, everyone, I just made a big mistake. I ran this experiment. This is how it turned out. And when we do that, that creates the culture. Now, your question about how do we help others on this journey, and really that's what the whole book goes into. And I didn't go into those models of change. There's a whole, I think, 8 or 9 patterns around that. But I think essentially, we hear a lot, especially in the Agile space, about the word invitation. The word invitation. But I think the word invitation, the way it's used, by a lot of people. It's much more invitation from, whoops, that's not what I want to do. Let's go back here. What just happened? Okay. This is what happens if we click on the wrong slide. Okay, when we use the word invitation, really a lot of people in the Agile space are using it from a traditional mindset. Like, I invite you, but there's an agenda. You can feel it. Who's experienced that? Raise your hand if you experienced that. People saying the word "I invite you," but it's not really invitation. You can feel it feels kind of slimy or gross or right. So it's not about So true invitation is over here, right? And when we have true invitation, that's how we build other leaders. And if you think about the movie The Matrix, Morpheus says to Neo, you can take the red pill and see the truth and see how deep the rabbit hole really goes, or you can take the blue pill and go back to your everyday, ordinary reality. And when we have that level of faith and belief in people, and we give them their freedom, that's how they can say yes. That's how they can voluntarily choose to step into their own truth, into their own power, into their own sovereignty as a human being. So really, and this is what we say to all of our graduates, if you're not seeing people showing up motivated, enthusiastic, taking on responsibility around you, it means that you're not a powerful enough attractor, that the limiting variable is you, and that more evolution is needed. That is saying whatever your current level of evolution is, you're seeing the result of that in the people around you. If you want to have a different result in people around you, you got to move this way. Once you move this way, people are going to start showing up differently. So that's the variable, the laws of cause and effect as we see and what we see with our students. And when people are asking you for help, they're seeking out your advice and guidance. People are flocking to you. People are, your time is in a lot of demand. You're being invited to meetings. People are, seeking your input. People are admiring you. They're saying, how did you, I love what you're doing. I love how you're showing up. How did you do that? That's how you know you're showing up in an evolved way. That's how you know you're over here, right? And most of us aren't getting that. Most of us are not experiencing that, which is a clue that more growth is needed. But this is what we see with our graduates who use this work, is that they get promoted within 6 months, that they are they have these dramatic shifts in results because they are starting to move and start operating in a much more evolved way that unlocks their performance, their capabilities. Does that help answer your question? I'm not sure if you have a follow-up question.
I think it definitely answers the portion of my leadership to my team, but still not being able to move the pendulum over with leaders in their own areas, my peers, my colleagues. And so, again, that speaks to self. So maybe I just need to learn how to work in this evolutionary way, not just with my team members, but with other departmental leaders who have their own areas and team members.
Yeah, so really what you're speaking to is the core of when we talk about kicking this command and control habit, getting out of this traditional management mindset. It's moving over on this side where we're learning how to lead through influence.
Yeah.
Lead through influence. And this is why we call evolutionary leadership, this mix of, where'd it go? This mix of doing and things that you need to do. And the book goes through a lot of these models of how to approach change. What does it mean to invite people really? Mm-hmm. But it actually requires a shift in our being. So there are these two things that can come together that allow us to unlock our full success, our full brilliance as a leader, right? So it's not just, I can evolve myself, I'm going to be in enlightened state of consciousness, blah, 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 blah. No. That's one dimension. We actually need the practical skills. We need to know, this is the model on organizational readiness. I need to understand how this model works so I know where to put in my effort, right? Page whatever. 263, right? That's the model that you probably want. It's like, well, who's ready to evolve right now? Who's not ready? Where to put your effort in. And because a lot of us, we're actually wasting a lot of effort in the wrong places.
Yes.
And so there are all these very practical doings that we can use to unlock ourselves. So.
Very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. Sasha?
Michael, people who have a fixed mindset,
Mhm.
if it would help them to realize that, if they could see themselves in a mirror that, oh, I have a fixed mindset, that would be a big win. But unfortunately, it's very difficult to achieve. How would
Yeah.
you do that?
Yeah, great question. So there's many answers. Probably the number one area to look at is, why are they in a fixed mindset? Why would a reasonably intelligent, well-meaning person be in a fixed mindset? And the answer is because they're actually at a very low level of psychological safety. That's why. They're over here. When they're in a low level of psychological safety, they're in a state of fear. The blood supply to the frontal cortex has gone down, which means their ability to learn is turned off. Right? So I'd say the people who are in a fixed mindset, there's nothing wrong with them. They're perfect. They're just reflecting their environment. So how do I, as a leader, restructure the environment to rehabilitate this person so that they're able to function? So I don't see it as a fault of people. We do this in our training. We go through cases of transformation. You can keep all your people. The problem isn't your people. The problem is the leadership creating the environment that's leading to the disengagement, the low desire for learning, right? And it's a very complex topic, because you can say, well, wait a second. How many years has that person been in their role with a fixed mindset? And if you look at some organizations, it's like, oh, well, they've been in a fixed mindset for the last 20 years, right? Learning hasn't been a part of a job requirement. Well, at that point, it's a very different kind of conversation. It's like, look, where we're going as an organization, and when we're modeling this, come back to, I think, what was raised earlier, when we're modeling as a leader our learning, our growth, our evolution, and we're making it safe for everyone else, then we're in a place where we're gonna have the conversation. Well, look, everyone else is learning and growing. Is this something, like, how can we help you get there? And if it's not something you're ready for, how do we help you exit the system? But it's a very conscious, mature conversation. But we can't do that unless we are modeling our own growth mindset, our own evolutionary mindset, our own journey first, and we're making it psychologically safe. So there are a lot of variables, and that's what really our hope is for this book, is people start looking at, well, wait a second, I have all these levers at my disposal to create an environment where people are going to start to open up. And that's my job. That's my role as a coach, as a manager, as an executive, is how do I look after my people?
So that all
sounds
sounds wonderful. Yeah, sorry.
So Sasha, really, the fixed mindset is not the people. It's the leadership system that's creating those fixed mindset workers. And so we fix the leadership system, we fix everybody. That's a pretty simple rule, but it applies. Does it help answer your question?
Kind of, yeah, thank you.
Okay, all right, Olaf?
I know it could be the whole topic for the whole night.
Yeah, we could, yeah, thank you. Olaf, you want to go next? Sorry.
Yeah, sure. If you're not done with this fixed mindset one, it's okay. We can continue that.
No. Just go with your question, I think.
Okay, so considering that we are social animals, if we have a few people who maybe find themselves on the path towards the evolutionary mindset, the rest of the people are still probably going to look around and go, oh, I see this person is this person, but all the other people here are not on that path. So I'm just going to stay safe and be with my people. I'm not going to stick my neck out. And so how do we work with the herd, or that human nature of us being social animals, to create kind of the critical mass, if you will?
Yeah, so that's actually one of the models of the book, is how do we go about doing that. But let me answer it briefly for you here. So the answer we have is that's perfect. If people don't want to change, we make it 100% safe for them to do absolutely nothing around change. You know what that'll do? That'll increase their level of psychological safety and make them more open to change by telling them they don't have to change. right? Which is totally, which is the right, which is the opposite of what we do. We tell people, oh, you have to change, and their safety level drops, and then they're even in a worse state than they were before. So people are social animals, but here's the deal: the people who are changing, are they going to be more successful or less successful? They're more successful.
Hopefully more, right? Hopefully
they're
more.
going to be more successful. There's a universal pattern. They'll be more successful. And other people, not all people, but some people will start to get jealous. And they'll say, what about me? And they'll want it too. And they'll go on the journey. So usually if you have like 7 teams, team 1 will go. And then teams 2 will go, oh, those guys are doing it. That doesn't look so bad. We're ready now. Can you help us? You help teams 2, and then teams 3 and 4, and then teams 5 and 6, and then team 7. You might have a difficult conversation, or they realize it's not so bad, and they're ready to go too, or something else happens with them. But people are social animals. But when we treat them with safety, when we treat them like sovereign beings with respect, that's what I'm saying. It's about beyond change. We need to rethink our approach to change because it's fundamentally flawed. We're still in this Cotter paradigm of build a sense of urgency, which keeps people in a state of psychological fear. Like most change programs start out, hey, most change programs are like, hey, we're right here in terms of our psychological safety, and now we're going to drop people's level of psychological safety and drop even over here by telling them they have to go through a transformation program and our company's in jeopardy and blah, 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 blah. Boom. So how are they supposed to learn? That's what I'm saying. Yeah, we're talking about a fundamental rethink. Fundamental rethink.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. Really good question.
Maybe I could ask a follow-up question to Ollis.
Yeah. Okay. What? I'm going to here's the last question. Because I think it's getting up at 11 o'clock here in Toronto. I'm running a bit of steam a little bit. But anyway, go ahead, Dave. You can have the closing question.
Oh, thank you. Really appreciate it. It just reminded me when you were talking about lowering resistance to change. So the Kanban method talks about that quite explicitly in terms of, as a change management method, start from where you are. We're not changing anything. We're just having a look at what it is. What do you want to do from there to lower the resistance to change, to create safety? So I just see a lot of synergy between the Kanban method and what you're describing there. It's probably the comment I wanted to make.
Yeah. Really, really, really good insight. If you think about Scrum and a lot of Agile, it's radical overhaul. And, I still have David Anderson's original, I can't remember the title of the original Kanban t-shirt. And I was very, very involved in that community, LLC and so on, about a decade ago, actually. And so that's really a deep layer that's intrinsic, but we're talking about doing and applying some of these concepts, not just from a practical kind of process level, which is where Kanban's coming from, but from a deep philosophical level about change. And I think the really important thing, and this is why in the book we go through all these patterns of traditional to evolutionary, is because people don't understand how deeply we're trapped into these traditional patterns, right? The patterns you're speaking about with Kanban are kind of over here, which is like start where you are, do iterative and incremental change, and so on, which are much more reflective of an ongoing evolutionary culture. But both require a learning mindset. So there's still this, how do we get started challenge and so on. But yeah, great insight. Thank you so much for that. All right, thank you so much, everyone. It's been my pleasure. I really appreciate the engagement. I appreciate the questions. Can see that there are lots of wheels turning, things spinning. So thank you so much, everyone. It's been my pleasure to join you here.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Michael. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Michael.
I would open up breakout rooms, or we can just all hang out in the main room. Let participants choose the room. That's what I'm going to do. I would start